Rev up your engines!
Engines made easy as do different gas stations have better gas. Here's the thing. Gasoline sold in the United States, at least, has to meet all kinds of federal standards. So, a lot of them are relatively similar. And understand that there are only a certain amount of companies that actually make the gasoline. I was shocked, I didn't know until a few years ago, that Shell Oil Company is actually the largest producer of refined gasoline. So they actually make gasoline for many other companies. And then they put a different color dye because they want to have a different color and stuff like that. But a lot of the gas that you buy might be made by Shell, but it's in a different company. So, a lot of it doesn't really mean all that much difference here in the United States. Now, that said, some of the top tier ones, like the Shell top tier highest end gasoline, has more additives in it, and it seems to be a much better product for people that have Porsches and Lamborghinis and old 60s muscle cars. That gasoline had a higher octane in those days, and they'll only run decent if you put a really high test gas in them. But for most people, in most cars that say can run on regular gas, you can buy gas just about anywhere and it will run perfectly fine. Capitano says, what do you think of a Honda Del Sol 1995 manual? Well, those are very interesting cars. They were never that popular. No, it's a 4-cylinder Honda with a standard transmission. They can run forever. If you like the way it looks and the style that it has, a lot of people like those cars. They weren't particularly fast, racy cars, but they had their own look and they could last a really, really long time. I had a customer with one of those and they had 350,000 miles on it. It still ran pretty good. So, there's nothing wrong with that car. If you buy a used one and get a good price, just don't pay a whole bunch of money for one. And the main reason for that is that it's just a runabout Honda, and it's really old. So you don't want to pay a whole bunch of money for it. It's never going to be a collector's item. It would be worth a lot of money. But it can still be a solid, reliable bit of transportation if it's taken care of. Beast says, hi, I traded my 94 S10 Blazer for an 03 Saab 9.3 Turbo. Did I get a good deal? Well, let's say you probably went from the frying pan into the fire. Those Blazers, when they're that old, 25 years old, an S10 is generally falling apart. But Saab 9.3 Turbos, that was one of the cars that made Saab go bankrupt. Those 9.3s weren't that great vehicles. And Turbo makes it even worse. But if it runs, hey, drive it. Neither of them are worth very much money. And if you get some good time out of it, who knows? Don't expect to drive that 9.3 Turbo 20,000 miles a year. Now, if you're using it to put low mileage on it, maybe it'll last you a while. But if the turbo goes out, you just junk it then. You wouldn't go any further. Andre Sotelo says, I put a used transmission in my 02 Honda Civic EX, and in a week it stops going in drive, but in reverse it goes fine. Oh. Well, I hate to tell you, but you got a crappy used transmission. If a transmission, you put it in reverse and it drives, or you put it in drive and it won't move, you got a problem inside that transmission. Anytime that you lose either forward or reverse inside the transmission, something is sheared off. Like you take a Ford transmission, generally they will lose reverse first. They'll go forward, but they won't back up. And in those, it's a problem in the planetary gear system. On the Hondas, they're completely different transmissions. They're more motorcycle-style transmissions. But you got a bad used transmission. I mean, it's a stinker, but that's the problem with Hondas. They have weak automatic transmissions. Putting in a used one isn't that good of an idea. Tyler Fuller says, Scotty, I drive a 94 Lincoln Continental. There's trouble starting sometimes, but it's only in between when I'm running errands when the car has already been driving. I turned it off. What do you think's wrong? It's very common problem with old vehicles. What happens is, as they age, the fuel injection system, either the injectors or the fuel pressure regulator, leaks a little fuel. When your engine is ice cold, an ice cold engine actually likes extra fuel, so it won't bother an ice cold engine. It'll work perfectly fine. But once it warms up and you turn it off, that extra fuel drips in the engine. Then when you try to start it, it's hard to start because it has flooded the engine out. But if you let it sit overnight, then all that extra fuel that's in the engine just evaporates over time, and then it starts right back up. That's the most common thing. The secondary thing that would do that would be, let's say you got a weak fuel pump, and when you turn it off, the fuel pump's hot now. Sometimes they're kind of shorted out, and then when you go to start it, they're not pumping fuel. To figure out which one it is, when it doesn't start, quick pull out a spark plug. And if you see the spark plug is wet, you'll know the fuel pump's working, and that it's flooding out. If it's totally dry, it'd be the fuel pump not pumping. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.